Be thou my vision, O Lord of my heart, not be all else to me, save that thou art. Thou my best thought by day or by night, waking or sleeping, thy presence my light.
One of the most piercing questions that really touched my heart through this Bible study was, do I really love Christ? And it took me by surprise. I would think, of course I do. I mean, don't I? But when I really examined the way I put emphasis on my idols instead of spending time with Him, instead of really loving Him, it really put things into perspective for me. And I realized that I need to divert my energies from those things that have become my idols to a loving relationship with Christ.
As we grow spiritually, as the stones in our hearts are removed, our blindness begins to be healed. We actually see people differently. In Mark 8, Jesus heals a blind man. And after Jesus touched the blind man, He asked him, "Do you see anything?" And he said, "I see men, but they look like trees walking." Then Jesus touched him again, and he saw people clearly. What does this mean? That Jesus failed the first time and had to do it again? No, every miracle is also meant to teach us something spiritually. It is also a parable. And this one shows us that spiritual growth is gradual, because we have these idols in our heart that block our vision. How do we see people when idols are blocking our vision? We see them as a means to an end. Galatians 5:15 says, "You bite and devour one another. Watch out, lest you consume one another." Now, we see it all the time in the world, people using each other, but we do it too, if we're honest. I was devouring my administrative assistants. I thought I was finding my identity in Jesus Christ, but I was finding my identity in the success of my ministry. And so I needed to control things and make sure she was doing a good job and make sure everything was going the way I felt it needed to go. And I am having a better relationship, not just with my administrative assistants, but with everybody. That's what's so amazing. I want you to hear from Rachel again, for she tells how seeing her idols changed her relationship with her children.
I have one child with whom I've had conflicts with from very early on. And I'm beginning to realize that I was making an idol of what I wanted my children to be, how I wanted them to act, what I wanted them to become, instead of just accepting them for who God has made them. I read in Age of Opportunity, Paul Tripp talks about when we're serving our idols, we actually began to see our children as enemies. And we actually, because they're keeping us from what we want in our idols, we actually start to get angry at them and fight against them, rather than loving them and showing them grace and fighting for them. And they have a battle going on in their own hearts. And we need to be fighting for them. I think I've been thinking, probably not consciously, but just that if I could control people and things and fix things in my life, then I'd be happier. But I actually found that I was making myself miserable in doing that, and I was making everybody around me miserable in doing that, and that my idols just constantly would fail me, and they would bring harm to me instead of just the joy and the intimacy that I have with the Lord when I run to Him instead of my idols.
One of the things I noticed is that in the mornings when I would come out to get my breakfast, Rachel would be in a fairly intense discussion with one of our children. There'd be a conflict or even an argument going on. But recently, Rachel's really changed. And I've noticed that when I come out for breakfast, the atmosphere is more pleasant. There's a lot more love just visible between her and the children. And I've just seen that real tangible change. It's been great, really.
You have reached the end of the first half of Lesson 2. Please proceed to the proper link as Dee concludes her message, Spiritual Blindness.